Masechet Gittin Daf Pe Vav. We're finishing to analyze some of the wording that's in the get, and then we'll see the next Mishnah about Gittin that are pasul, somewhat pasul. Miyomad denan la pukem et Rabbi Yosef damar zemano shel shtar mochiach alav. According to Rava, he gave a formula here, and it says that from this day and forever, right, you are divorced and you can go marry everyone. That phrase, from this day and on, why do we have to put that in? That excludes the opinion of Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef says, even without saying from today, we assume that it applies to on the date that is written in the get. Whenever the get is written, you can look at the date and say, oh, there it is. It applies from that date, and therefore you don't have to write Yom Denan. So by writing in Yom Denan that I'm declaring it applies from today, that excludes the opinion of Rabbi Yosef that we automatically use the date in the get. Ul alam, and this get will apply forever. By writing the words forever, that excludes the question that Rava asked Rav Nachman about a case where a husband says, you are divorced today. In other words, today you are not my wife, you can marry anybody, but tomorrow you are my wife, meaning tomorrow I forbid you from marrying anyone. It's kind of saying you can marry, you're divorced, kind of like on condition that you marry today, but you can't marry anyone tomorrow. So we discussed over there, is that good or not? Back in a couple of dapim ago, we concluded that it's fine. Since today, everyone, she's free to marry everyone. There are no exclusions at all in terms of people today, so she is totally divorced today, and therefore it's a valid get. However, Rava here says, no, you know what? Put in the word la'alam. It's only valid if it will be valid, not just today, but forever. And if there's a time limitation on it, then actually that will be a problem. Gufo shel get shichrur, hare'at bet chorin hare'at le'asmech. The Mishnah mentioned the formula for releasing a slave, which was you are free or you are your own, right? You own yourself. Atken Rav Yehuda b'shtar zibine de avde. So Rav Yehuda now tells us the language for the document to sell a slave, not to free him, but to sell him. Avda denan mustak le'avdo. First, you start and says this slave is justified to as a slave, meaning that he is officially owned. So I guess it's establishing ownership of the seller. And that also that, or either that, or that he's a good slave, he's a good worker. Uftir ve'atir min haruri umin aluli umin arure malka umalketa urshum inish la'it alohi uminuke mikomum umin shechin denafek ad tashar hadat ve'atik. And furthermore, he is dismissed, removed from being a slave, and he also, he's no longer my slave. And he has no accusations or judgments by the king and queen, meaning he has no, he's not guilty of crimes that if the buyer is going to pay for the slave, and then the government will come and say, oh, he's arrested because he murdered someone yesterday. And so don't worry, he's crime free. And also, there is no sign of ownership of another person. I'm the sole owner. It's not like you're going to buy it and someone else is going to come, oh, wait, I'm a half owner. I was the previous owner. Also, he's clean of any blemish and boils for the past 4 years. The word tashad is a Persian word meaning for both old and new blemishes. All right, he's good, he's clean, and so this is proper to write this formula in such a document of sale. My asute. Now, speaking of boils, if someone does have it, what's the cure? Amar Abaye, gin bara umar techa vechab rita vechala dechamra umishcha dezeta venatpik chivara veshayfele begadfa vde avza. One should take ginger and a slag from silver and sulfur and wine vinegar and or olive oil and white naphtha and spread it with goose feather. So this brings us back to the previous perek that had all the remedies for different ailments. Okay, next Mishnah. Shelosha gitin pistulin vim niset havalad kasher. There are 3 types of gitin that are invalid. However, b'di'avad, if someone received that get and got married and had a child, the child will be considered kasher, not a mamzer. Because if the get is totally invalid, no get at all, then she's still married to the first husband, and the child from the second husband would be eshet ish, and therefore mamzer. However, in this case, that's pasul, probably midrabanan, and therefore, even if a person goes and does it on the doraita level, the woman is divorced. There's just some technical problem that the rabbi said not to get married based on it, not to use it. But since on the doraita level, it's okay, so the child is not a mamzer. Here are the three categories. Katab bichtav yado ven alav aidim. A husband wrote the get himself, even if there are no witnesses. One of the purposes of the witnesses is to testify that, yes, indeed, the husband commissioned this get, and he wanted it. But if the husband wrote it in his own handwriting, so that's evident that he wanted it. So therefore, this is pasul, but the children from such a get will be kasher. Yesh alav adim ve'en bo zeman. Or if there are adim but there's no time written in it, that's a problem if you don't know what time is in it, because it can be used. For example, if someone commits adultery and the husband and the wife can collude to make a forged get that has a prior date before that act of adultery, and thereby save her, but that was it's not true. So this also is in pasul, but the child is kasher. Yesh bo zeman ve'en bo ela aid ehad. It has a date, but only one witness. Gemara will talk about how it could be valid at all with one witness. Harei elu shelosha gittin pesulin v'im niset havalad kasher. And so it starts with a formula of 3 and ends with a summary formula of these are the 3. Gemara will say why it has to give us a number both in the beginning and in the end. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Af al pi she'en alav aidim, ela shenetano la bifnei aidim, kasher, vegovav min nechasim meshub'adim, she'en aidim chotmim al haget, ela mipnei tikun ha'olam. Rabbi Eliezer says that even if there are no edim written on the get, as long as you give it, the husband gives it to the wife in front of edim, right? This is edeh misira karte, as we've discussed before. That's fine. You don't actually need edeh kitiba. You don't need edim written in the document. You only need them to witness the transfer of the document to the woman. And so even if there are no edim written in it, but there are edim that see it, the woman can collect her ketubah. She has to have her ketubah. She also has to prove that the divorce went through. So this document, even though it has no witnesses, she can still present it and say, "Here, look, I am divorced now. I'm coming to collect my ketuvah," and she can even collect from lien property. If the husband had sold some property before hand and he has nothing on hand, she can go and collect from that, even though this document does not have edim written on it. Why? Because the edim written on the get are only there because of tikkun ha'olam, as to help make sure that in case the husband will come and say, "Wait, I never wrote it, I never wanted it," then we have the witnesses that say, "No, we were there. We signed it. We with you. You told us to," and therefore we can verify, or even without those witnesses there. The witnesses, if we verify the signatures and say these signatures are verified signatures, that means they signed it. And if they signed it, that means they signed it because you asked them to. And therefore, this is because of Tikkun Ha'olam. It will help verify the get later on. But according to the Rabbi Eliezer, it's not absolutely necessary for the get to be valid. All right. Now we wonder, wait, are these the only 3 types of divorce that have this in-between status? Va'ika get yashan. There's also get yashan if a husband writes a get, but then he doesn't give it to her, and then they are secluded together. So then he should not use that get afterwards, because they may have a child, and then the people will calculate and said, wait, this child was born was conceived after the date in the get, and people won't know that he waited to give it to her, and then they'll say negative slander about that child. So therefore, Rabbi said, don't use a get yashan. However, if you do use it, the child is kasher. So how come we don't include that on the list? No hatam lo teseh teseh, hacha teseh. There, in the case of a get yashan, if he gave her a get yashan and she got married, then she can stay married. So it's more lenient. Whereas in these three cases, if she went and got married based on those three Gittin, she has to leave her husband. It's true, if they have a child, the child won't be a mamzer, but these category of three is more stringent than get yashan. Okay, that was okay according to the one who interprets our Mishnah to mean that they have to get divorced. The Mishnah doesn't say explicitly either way. It just says that the get is pasul, but the child is kasher. Okay, get being pasul. What if she does get married? Can she stay married or not? It's ambiguous, and there's two interpretations. So if you say they have to be separated, then we understand a distinction and why get yashan is not included. But if you say that in our Mishnah they don't have to separate, then get yashan should be included. And the answer is hatam tinaseh lechatechila hachad di'avad. In the case of a get yashan, the husband should not give it, but be lechatechila. B'di'avad, if he gave it, then she can get married lechatechila. Right at that stage already, she's permitted to get married and obviously stay married. Whereas in these three Gittin, she should not get married in the first place, and only b'di'avad, according to this interpretation, lo teseh, then you don't have to leave. So in both of them, it's true that they don't have to separate. But in with the get yashan, if it was already given to her, she can get married lechatechila. In the other three, she cannot get married lechatechila. V'ha'ika get kereach. Wait a second. What about the get that's the folded type of get? If it doesn't have as enough signatures, some of the folds are empty. That's also an in-between problematic get. So hatam valad mamzer, hacha valad kasher. No, that is even worse. See, in order to be in this Mishnah, has to be in the Goldilocks area, right? Not too stringent, not too lenient. That type of get, if she goes ahead and gets married and has a child, the child will be mamzer. Whereas in our list of three, the child is okay. Okay, this answer makes sense only according to the Meir, who says anyone who deviates from something that the rabbis made, even if it's only the Rabbanan institution, but once the rabbis say you have to write it in this way, and if you don't do that, then the child is a mamzer. So then, yes, a get kereach, the child would be a mamzer. But that he's only a minority opinion. According to Rabbanan, they say, yeah, you're supposed to write it in this way, but if you don't, it's only a Rabbanan problem. So they're not going to make the child a mamzer. And that's, if so, a get kereach, the child would not be a mamzer, so it should be on the list. And the answer is hatam teseh, hacha lo teseh. In the case of get kereach, they have to separate. Whereas in the list of three over here, you don't have to separate. Find that makes sense according to the opinion that interprets our Mishnah as being that they can stay together. But there's another opinion that says that in the things in our Mishnah, teseh. So then in that case, the get kereach and the three things on the list would be exactly the same. So it should be listed. So why didn't you list it? The answer is mikushad la kamaire. Now Mishnah is not talking about the folded and tied type of get. It's talking about just there's three types of regular Gittin that fit into this category. And it's true, this get karech would also, but we're not listing every type of get in the world, only within the category of regular Gittin and not folded Gittin. V'ha'ika shelo malchut. Wait a second, we had the case of someone who writes the date in the wrong way. Instead of writing for the current government, like for the Persian emperor, if he's in the Persian Empire, he writes to the time of the Bet HaMikdash, to the time of the Greek emperor, or something like that. All those are invalid, but in this in-between category, because we have to care about the peaceful relations with the government. How come that's not listed in this Mishnah? Hatam teseh, hacha lo teseh. No, because there, if someone uses such a get, they have to separate. In our Mishnah, they don't have to separate. Hanicha laman damar hacha lo teseh, ela laman de'amar teseh ma'ika lememar. That's fine according to the opinion that interprets our Mishnah to mean that they don't have to separate. But according to the one that says they have to separate, how will they, then why not include this Shalom Malchut case also in the Mishnah? The answer is it's still different. Hatam havalad mamzer, hachavalad kasher. In the case of Shalom Malchut, writing the data in the wrong format, the child is a mamzer. In these three cases in the Mishnah, the child is kasher. Okay, that's a good answer. According to Rabbanan, even in that case, the child is not a mamzer, so then they're all the same. Why doesn't it include it? Oh, so in fact, we have to establish that the case is, this Mishnah is only according to Rabbi Meir, and that's why in that case of the Shalom Malchut, writing in the wrong formula, the child will be a mamzer, whereas in all the cases in this Mishnah, the child is kasher, and so that's why we don't include it. Notice the parentheses here, because, what's going on. So to check whether it belongs or not, we have to check the manuscripts. And in fact, in the manuscripts, you'll see that the first part that's not in parentheses, does not appear in manuscripts. The second part does appear in manuscripts. So you should not take out the second part. In fact, it's actually just a matter of order. This set of questions comes in most manuscripts after the other set of questions. So in fact, almost all manuscripts have both sets of questions. Just the question is it first or last. So our version of the text, we should really just flip around the questions, the questions, and if we do that, then we'll have the text, the right text, at least according to most of the manuscripts. Okay, now we ask. How come the Mishnah says these are three at the beginning, and then again it says these are the three at the end? When it says three, it sounds like it's saying these three and only these three. What is it excluding? And the beginning first three is to exclude all these that we just mentioned, that for one reason or another don't fit it exactly into this set. It wants you to know these are the three cases that are exactly like this, and the other ones are either too stringent or too lenient. The last count is to exclude the following case of Braita. If someone, messenger, brings a get from overseas and he gives it to the wife and he doesn't say the formula, it was written and signed in my presence. So according to the Bimeir, they have to, if she gets married, she has to divorce that, leave that second husband, and if she had a child, the child is a mamzer. Even though he gave the get through a messenger, he didn't say this formula, and the formula is necessary. According to Bimeir, Hachamim omrim en avalad mamzer kesad yaaseh yitelenu hemena v'yachzor v'tenen ala b'fnei shanai v'yomar b'fanai nichtav v'nai nichtav. Hachamim say no, the valad is not, the child is not a mamzer. Rather, what you have to do, the messenger should take it from her back and then give it to her again in front of Edim and say it was written and signed in front of my presence, because there is a fix to this case. So therefore, it doesn't fit into the same category as the other three, right? Because, if you don't fix it, it'll be a problem. But as long as you take it and give it again with the proper formula, then it's okay. So it's not the same as the other three. But in order to make sure that we exclude this case and say it's not the same, that's the number 3 at the end is there to hint to that. All right, Kitav bichtav yadov and alav adim. Amarav kitav yado shaninu. So the first case in the Mishnah is that he wrote it in his own handwriting, but there was no signatures on it. Rav comments about this case that this is only true if the husband's own signature, own writing, he wrote it himself. That's when this Mishnah is true. Now, this is strange because that's exactly what it says, Ketav Yado. Okay, but Rav didn't say it on that Dibur Matril. This Dibur Matril is part of the editors that put this in. So all we have is a statement of Rav that says, Ketav Yado Shaninu, this Mishnah talking about a case where the husband wrote the get himself. So now we have to wonder, which of the 3 cases did Rav say this about? If he's talking about the first case of the Mishnah, then obviously the husband wrote it because it says the husband wrote it. Ela misiata hadei yesh alav edim. But the second case was there are edim on it. There's just that's missing a date. So can't be talking about that because there are edim, and so it doesn't matter if he wrote it or didn't write it. Ela sefa yesh bo zman ven bo ela ed ehad. The third case is it has a date, but there's only one witness, and we say, although it's a get pasul, the children are kisherim. So why is that? That's what Rav is saying. Davka ketav yado ve'ayed, aval ketav sofer ve'ayed la. Only if the husband wrote the get himself, and there's one witness, so then that could combine. The husband's writing and the one witness can combine to make it a somewhat good get that the children will not be mamzerim. But if it's the sofer wrote it and one witness, well, that's only one witness, and that get is totally no good. The child will even be a mamzer. That's Rav's opinion. Shmuel says even if you have just a scribe and one witness, even that get is somewhat valid. After all, in the Mishnah that we're going to see on tomorrow's daf, it says that a get written by a scribe and one witness, it says is good. So you can't say that the child will be a mamzer. Here it says it's good. That's a challenge against Rav. Rav, how would Rav respond to that? Rav says obviously you cannot compare them because in the Mishnah, the next daf, it says kasher, meaning they could marry lechatechila. It's a totally good get. So you can't compare that to the case in the previous Mishnah and think that the previous Mishnah, our Mishnah, is also talking about the same case, because in our Mishnah, it's only b'di avad that we would say it could be good. And therefore, obviously, it's not talking about the same case. Rather, Rav says, no, our Mishnah is talking about only when it's the husband himself wrote it and there is one ayed. Now, how will Shmuel respond to that? Ushmuel la kashya habesafra demuvhak habesafra de la muvhak. Shmuel says, no, in fact, both cases include the writing of a sofer and one witness. The next Mishnah is talking about an expert scribe who's well known to be trustworthy, and so he'll make sure that everything is done above board, and therefore it's a good get lechatechila. Whereas our Mishnah just now is with a sofer who's not an expert scribe, and we cannot be so sure, and that's why it's not a good get lechatechila. Now the same statement that we just saw in the name of Rav, Rabbi Yochanan also said that our Mishnah is talking about a case where it's the husband writing himself. Amar le Rabbi Elazar v'harei yesh alav edim. Rabbi Elazar, thinking that Rabbi Yochanan was talking about the middle case, says, what do you mean? The middle case says there's no date, but it has edim on it already. Amar le asefa. So he responded, I was talking about the ending, the third case of the Mishnah. This is in Eretz Yisrael, you see in Bavel and in Eretz Yisrael, they had the same Shekla v'Tariah. They had a statement that said Katav Yado Shaninu, but they weren't sure which clause it's on, so they tried it out and figured out it has to be on the third clause. Zimnin Amar Rav Teseh, Zimnin Amar Rav Lo Teseh. Now Rav, when he decided such cases, sometimes when there was a problematic get like these, sometimes he would say they have to leave. They have to separate the couple the second time, and sometimes he would say they can remain married. So what's going on? Hakesad, how did he decide? Yesh labanim lo teseh en labanim teseh. If this woman received such a problematic get and got married and had children, then she can remain married to the second husband. We don't want to nullify the children and make them mamzerim and then have separated parents and all kinds of problems. So therefore, they can remain married. It's a safek after all. But, I mean, it's a drabanan, right? These are drabanan problems. But if there are no children, then, this is a problem. Even if it's a drabanan problem with the get and there was used, there's no children anyway, so separate from this guy, the second husband, right, and go back, get a proper get, and then live happily ever after. Mativ Morzutra bar Tuvia. V'chulan shayu behen sefek kedushin o sefek yerushin, harei elu chosot velo mitya bemot. And so now we have a challenge to Rav, who says that if they are If they have children, they can stay. If you say that they can have, if they have children, that she can stay married, it's going to seem like it's for sure a good get, and this could lead to a problem in the following scenario. Here we're referring to cases like of sarat habat, where someone is married to a relative, like a niece, which is permitted, and also married to other wives, and then dies without children. And in that case, the husband, the brother, the yavam, since one of the wives is his own daughter, does not do yibum and does not do chalitza. Now, what if you have such a similar case, but the original marriage of that uncle to the niece, there was a safek in that kiddushin, or that they were divorced. Now, if they were for sure divorced, and then he died, so then there would be no problem. You could absolutely do yibum, because the daughter is out of the picture. Either was never married, or was married but was given a get, so out of the picture. So then you could do yibum with the other wives. That's no problem at all. But here there's a safek. Because there's a safek, so that daughter is going to not be able to do yibum even at all. But the other wives, one of them will have to do chalisa. They can't do yibum because maybe that daughter is in fact married, because there's a safek kiddushin or safek girushin. But they can't do nothing because maybe that daughter was not married to the guy who died, and therefore one of them should do halitza. Okay, that was Mishnah in Yavamot. Now, kesad safek kiddushin, we're still elaborating till we finish the question. What is the case of safek kiddushin? Zarak la kiddushin, safek karov la, safek karov lo. So safek kiddushin, he throws her some money and says, here, hared mukadeshet, with this thing, and throws it, and we're not sure if it landed closer to him or closer to her. Safek kiddushin, kata bichtav yado ve'en alav edim. Yesh alav edim, ve'en bo zeman. Yesh bo zeman ve'en bo ela aid echad. That is safek kiddushin. What's a case of safek get? The three cases that we have in our Mishnah, where it's the husband wrote it himself, but there's no witnesses, or there are witnesses, but there's no time date on it, or is a date on it, but there's only one witness. These are all safek gerushin. Now, iyamat lo teseh saratat yali abumeh. If, according to the Pesach we just had here, according to Rav, you say if there are children, then you can stay married. Well, then, if let's say there's such a case, and the husband, there's the uncle, gives a get to that niece, and she goes and gets remarried based on that, and then the rabbis find out, and has children, the rabbis find out, and say, okay, you know what, you can stay married. Well, then everyone will think it was a full-fledged proper get. And what will happen if that husband then dies without children? One of the rivals will say, oh, well, we can do yibum, right? Because after all, that must be a totally valid get, and they'll go ahead and do yibum. And so we should make any kind of safek separate, even if there are children, so that it doesn't lead to such a problem of doing yibum in such a case. And the Gemara answers, okay, what's the worst case scenario? That in this case they'll do yibum? That's only a problem midrabanan, because on the Doraita level the get is a get. And therefore, so when that daughter goes and gets remarried, right? So it's fine, on Dorata level she can remain married. The children are certainly not mamzerim, and since the get on the Dorata level is a good get, the person who died was not married to her at all. Therefore, the yavam is on the Dorata level not related to any of the wives of his brother. So you can do yibum. What is only because midrabanan we say is a problematic get, so therefore don't do yibum. Okay, midrabanan you shouldn't do yibum, but we don't have to now make a gezerah just because of that, since the problematic situation at worst is only the Rabbanan. No, we need to make a gezerah against it. Levi Amar leolam lo teseh v'chad amar Rabbi Yochanan leolam lo teseh. Now, even though Rav says sometimes teseh, sometimes lo teseh, Levi said no, never. Even if the wife did not have children, she does not have to leave. Once she got married, she shouldn't get married with such a problematic get. But if she did, she does not have to leave. And Rabbi Yochanan also said she does not have to leave that husband. This is earlier today. We saw that there was, according to one who says lo teseh, according to one who says teseh. So this is what's referring to the machloket here. V'chen amar lehu. Rabbi Yochanan libnei Rabbi halafta demin huna hachi amar abuchon leolam lo teseh. Rabbi Yochanan said to the sons of Rabbi halafta huna, in the name, quoting their father, he also said lo teseh. Ve'karsit sheba'amid ena poselet b'mei hatat. Now, he also happened to quote, your father also gave a different halacha, that a karsit, a type of fly that's found in sheaves, does not disqualify mechatat. Mechatat is water that you use to mix with the para aduma. That water has to be water that it was not used, was not worked with. And so if you have a fly that sucks from that water, drink some of it, that's okay. We'll see what this is talking about. So this is going on a tangent just because we happen to mention a halakha in the name of the sage. My karsit did beta tebene kefe. This is a fly that's found among the sheaves. Metiv Rav Daniel bar Rav Katina. Kol afot poslin b'mechatat chutz min hayona b'pnei shemoseset v'imita nitne chutz mi yona v'karsit. Now we have a challenge because here it says that a fly that drinks this water does not make the water pasul. But with this Mishnah says all birds make mechatat pasul if they drink from it, except for a yonah, because a yonah only sucks and doesn't spill back. So now we understand the reason why. All birds and other insects also, when they drink, they're going to dribble some back, and that's considered working with the water and makes all the water pasul to use for mechatat. But a yonah, it drinks only nice and cleanly, and only drinks up and doesn't have any dribble down. Now, that Mishnah only gives one exception of a yonah. It does not say that exception is also this karsit fly. If a karsit fly also is okay, why doesn't this Mishnah mention it as well? And that's a challenge to that halacha. La pesika le gdigedola la pasla kutana paska. Because the Mishnah only wanted to give clear-cut cases and didn't want to have to qualify and say, because the fly, only if it's big, then it doesn't disqualify. But if it's small, then it does disqualify. So I didn't want to get into all the technicalities of that. Therefore, just mentioned yonah and not this type of fly. Vad kama. How big is called big? If it's a kezayit big, that fly is then fine if it drinks. But if it's still small, then and it drinks from the water, then the water is disqualified. All right, now we get to the next part of the Mishnah, to be El-Azar Omed. Our Mishnah read to be Eliezer. It probably should be to be El-Azar. He's the one that says, Afapi, even if there's no signatures on a document, it's totally fine. Because he says, Ade Mesira Karte. The witnesses that witness the transfer, they're the ones that are the key ones, and you actually do not need witnesses on the signing the document. The get. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav halacha k'Rabbi Elazar begittin ki amrita kamed Shmuel Amar af bishtarot. Now Rav says we follow Rabbi Elazar only regarding a get. But when we said in front of Shmuel says we can follow Rabbi Elazar also for monetary documents. They also do not need signatures. Ve'Rav savar b'shtarot lo havkatani begova min nechasim mishubadim. Wait, so Rav, by saying it halacha is only like Rabbi Elazar in Gittin, but not in shtarot. So, but that doesn't make sense because in our Mishnah it says not only is it a good get, the wife can use that get without signatures to collect from lien property. And so that is an application to monetary law. And yet, Rav said, this is the halacha is like Rabbi Elazar in this case of get, but that includes a monetary consequence. So it should be good for monetary documents as well. And the answer is no. Rabbi Elazar tate amar Rav sabar kivate bechada ufaleg ale bechada. In fact, Rabbi Elazar was saying two halachot. Number one, a get does not require witnesses, and so it's a valid divorce. Second, it can even have monetary application because even monetary documents do not need witnesses. That's what Rabbi Elazar said. And Rav said, listen, I agree with Rabbi Elazar regarding the get for the laws of divorce. In other words, if you give such a get without witnesses, she can go ahead and get remarried. But with regard to the monetary consequences of collecting a ketubah or monetary documents generally, I do not agree with Rabbi Elazar. For that, you'd need witnesses. V'chen amar Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Halacha ke Rabbi Elazar begitin v'Rabbi Yanai amar afilu reach haget en bo. Further machloket, Rabbi Yaakov in the name of Ribal says halacha is like Rabbi Elazar all in get, only in get, just like Rav said here. And Rabbi Yanai says opposite, that if you have a document with no witnesses on it, it not only is it not a good get, it doesn't even have a law of reach haget. Reach haget is a get that's pasul, but it is written and given, and therefore would make her pasul to marry a kohen. We saw one opinion even if it's not given. Right, so these are cases where there is a get that's written, that's around, and some kind of rumor that there's a get, and even the rumor of a get makes her pasula kohen. But Rabbi Yanai says this type of get with no witnesses, it's the same as giving her tissue paper. It's absolutely nothing. So that's the exactly the opposite opinion of Rabbi Elazar. So we ask Rabbi Yanai, let Rabbi Elazar, really Rabbi Yanai does not hold of Rabbi Elazar. Look at all these sages that said halachas like him. Hachi kamal rabbanan afil reach haget en bo. So no, this is what he meant to say. He agrees that halacha is like Rabbi Elazar, but if you follow Rabbanan that says you need two witnesses, then a document without witnesses is like nothing. It's like tissue paper. It doesn't even have a law of reach haget. V'chen amar Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina amar Resh Lakish halachak Rabbi Elazar begitin. Rabbi Yochanan amar afil reach haget en bo. We have a similar quote that these two sages, in the name of other sages, Resh Lakish says halacha is like Rabbi Elazar. You don't need two witnesses. Rabbi Yochanan says the get is totally invalid. It doesn't even have a law of reach haget. Let Rabbi Yochanan let Rabbi Elazar. You're telling me that he disagrees with Rabbi Elazar. Hachi kama Rabbanan afil reach haget en bo. No, Rabbi Yochanan in fact thinks Rabbi halacha is like Rabbi Elazar. He was just mentioning that if you would follow Rabbanan, then it's totally invalid, and she can even marry a kohen. Shalach le Rabbi Abba bar Zavda le Mari bar Mor ba'imine merav huna halacha Rabbi Elazar begitin o en halacha. Rabbi Abba bar Zavda asked Mari bar Mor, can you ask Rav Huna whether halacha is like Rabbi Elazar regarding a get or not? Adachi nach nafshe, then the Rav Huna. So he went to ask, but by the time he got there, Rav Huna had died. Amar le Rabba bere, hachi amar Abba mishmeh de Rava. So his son was there, Rav Huna's son, and his son said, "This is what my father said in the name of Rava." Halacha ke Rabbi Elazar begitin. Yes, in fact, halacha is like Rabbi Elazar in the case of Gittin. Rabotenu bekim midbar halacha mishum Rabbeinu amiru halacha ke Rabbi Elazar begitin. De amar Rav Chama bar Gudia amar Rav halacha ke Rabbi Elazar begitin. And the rabbis who were experts in halacha said, in the name of our teacher, that halacha is like Rabbi Elazar. For they said, in the name of Rav, that halacha is like Rabbi Elazar regarding a get. Ikad amre, another version of that last statement. חברנו בקינדוד בר הלכה ותלמידי רבנו, משום רבנו אמרו, הלכה כרבי אלעזר בגיטין. דאמר רב חיסדא, אמר רב חמא בר גורי, אמר רב, הלכה כרבי אלעזר בגיטין. Our colleagues who are experts in halacha and the students of our teacher said in the name of our teacher that halacha is like Rabbi Elazar in Gittin. And specifically, who said that? It was Rav Chisda, who quoted the name of Rav Chama bar Guria, who quoted the name of Rav. Rav is the great teacher. Halacha is in fact like Rabbi Elazar, only regarding a get. V'chena ki ata rabin amar Rabbi Elazar, amar Rav, halacha ki Rabbi Elazar, begitin. All right, that's quite a long list of sages from different generations and different places that all agree that halacha follows Rabbi Elazar, but only regarding a get. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen.